Imagine standing on a football field. 80,000 fans screaming, your heart pounding against your chest like a war drum. And across the line of scrimmage stands a man who is about to make your life a living nightmare. In the National Football League, there are quarterbacks you respect. There are quarterbacks you game plan for. And then there are quarterbacks who haunt you. The ones who invade your sleep the night before a matchup. The ones whose very presence on the opposing sideline fills defensive coordinators with a creeping, suffocating sense of dread. This is not a list of the greatest quarterbacks in history. Statistics and accolades can be found elsewhere. This is the list of the most terrifying. The men who made all-pro linebackers hesitate, who made defensive backs pray for rain delays and schedule changes, who turned routine third-and-long situations into catastrophic nightmares that defensive coaches still wake up sweating about. These are the 10 scariest quarterbacks in NFL history, and if you have ever wondered what true fear looks like in the eyes of a 250-pound professional athlete, you are about to find out. Number 10. Randall Cunningham. Before there was a blueprint, there was Randall Cunningham. In an era when quarterbacks were expected to stand tall in the pocket, read the defense, and deliver the football with mechanical precision, Cunningham arrived like a nightmare no one had prepared for. He did not just play the position differently, he destroyed every assumption defensive coordinators held sacred. The Philadelphia Eagles quarterback stood 6 feet 4 inches with the legs of a track star and the improvisational instincts of a jazz musician playing in a hurricane. Watching him escape the pocket was like watching water slip through clenched fingers. You could not contain him. You could only watch in horror as your perfect defensive scheme collapsed into chaos. The moment that crystallized the terror came against the New York Giants. All-pro linebacker Carl Banks had Cunningham dead to rights, a clean sack, a certain loss. Banks launched himself at the quarterback with violent intentions, and then, somehow, impossibly, Cunningham dipped beneath the tackle like he had removed his own spine, escaped the grasp of a man paid millions to bring people to the ground, and turned a catastrophic loss into a completion. Banks would later describe the experience with the hollow voice of a man who had seen something he could not explain. Defenders did not just fail to sack Randall Cunningham, they failed to comprehend him. And that incomprehension bred a deep, unsettling fear. You could do everything right and still watch helplessly as he turned your best effort into a highlight reel of your humiliation. He was the prototype, the original nightmare, and every dual-threat quarterback who followed owes him a debt paid in the anxiety of defensive coordinators everywhere. Number 9. Cam Newton. There is a particular kind of terror that comes from facing a physical impossibility. Cam Newton was that impossibility. 6 feet 5 inches, 260 pounds of sculpted granite. He possessed the arm strength of a cannon, the speed of a running back, and the power of a short-yardage fullback. And he played quarterback. Defenses across the National Football League had no framework for what Newton presented. You could not simply defend the pass because he would tuck the ball and barrel through your front seven like a freight train with a grudge. You could not simply stack the box because that rocket launcher attached to his shoulder would make you pay over the top. The Carolina Panthers signal caller did not dance around contact. He sought it. He reveled in it. Watch the film of Newton on goal line situations, and you will see something that makes defensive players' stomachs turn. He did not try to sneak through gaps or reach the ball over the pile. He launched himself like a human missile, daring anyone to meet him in the air. And when they met him, they lost. The Superman celebration was not mere showmanship. It was psychological warfare. Every time Newton ripped open his jersey after a touchdown run, he was sending a message to the defensive players who had just failed to stop him. He was reminding them that they had given their absolute best, and their best was not good enough. Linebackers who prided themselves on their physicality found themselves bouncing off Newton like children. Safeties who made careers out of delivering violent hits found themselves on the wrong end of collisions. He did not fear contact, and men who do not fear contact are terrifying to men who rely on contact as their primary weapon. When you cannot hurt a man, and that man can absolutely hurt you, the fear becomes rational, and there was nothing irrational about fearing Cam Newton. Number 8. Lamar Jackson. Some will argue this selection is premature. Those people have never tried to tackle Lamar Jackson. The Baltimore Ravens quarterback represents the evolution of terror at the position. He is not merely a dual-threat quarterback. He is a completely different species of problem. Defensive coordinators do not game plan for Lamar Jackson the same way they game plan for other quarterbacks. They hold their breath and pray. Jackson runs the football with the urgency of a man being chased and the elusiveness of smoke in a windstorm. His rushing numbers are not just impressive, they are historically unprecedented for a quarterback. He has posted seasons that running backs would envy, all while throwing for thousands of yards and dozens of touchdowns. But statistics do not capture the terror. You must watch the film. Watch defenders sell out to make a tackle, only to grasp nothing but air as Jackson bends at angles that seem to defy human physiology. Watch linebackers commit to one gap, only to witness Jackson materialize in another, already 5 yards downfield and accelerating. Watch entire defensive schemes collapse into headless confusion as Jackson turns a simple zone read into a 40-yard catastrophe. His ankle-breaking moves are not metaphorical. Defenders have genuinely crumbled trying to change direction quickly enough to mirror his cuts. The terror he inspires is the terror of obsolescence. He makes professional athletes, men who have dedicated their entire lives to the craft of defense, look like they wandered onto the field from the parking lot. Lamar Jackson is still writing his legacy, but the nightmares he has already authored are sufficient to earn his place among the most fear-inducing quarterbacks the game has ever seen.
Number 7. Terry Bradshaw. The modern game has largely forgotten the violence that defined professional football in the 1970s. Terry Bradshaw has not forgotten. He carries those wars in his body. The Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback was not flashy. He was not beloved by the media of his era. What he was, undeniably and terrifyingly, was a winner who played with the ferocity of a man who simply refused to acknowledge pain. Bradshaw possessed a cannon for an arm, not the elegant touch and timing arm of a finesse quarterback, a weapon. He threw footballs like he was trying to hurt people, and receivers occasionally had to ice their hands after practice. Defensive backs who picked off his passes sometimes wished they had not. But the true terror of Bradshaw lay in his constitution. He played through injuries that would have ended lesser careers. He absorbed hits from defenses specifically designed to punish quarterbacks into retirement. He stood in against the Oakland Raiders, the Dallas Cowboys, the Houston Oilers, against rosters constructed like wrecking crews, and he did not blink. 4 Super Bowl championships. 4 times he walked onto the biggest stage in professional sports and performed under pressure that would have crumbled ordinary men. Defenders could hit Terry Bradshaw. They could hurt him. They could make him pay for every throw. But they could not make him afraid. And a quarterback who does not fear pain is a quarterback who will make you pay for your aggression eventually. Bradshaw always made them pay. He was old school in the truest sense, built from concrete and stubbornness, forged in an era when the forward pass was still partially considered an act of cowardice. And he threw it anyway, with power and fury and 4 rings to prove that terror runs both directions. Number 6. Ben Roethlisberger. Imagine you have done everything right. You have beaten your blocker. You have a clear path to the quarterback. Your arms are extending for the sack that will end this play and salvage this drive for your defense. And then Ben Roethlisberger simply refuses to go down. The Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback was not mobile in any traditional sense. He could not outrun defenders. He was not going to juke anyone in the open field. What Roethlisberger possessed was something more frustrating, more maddening, more deeply terrifying. He possessed an almost supernatural ability to absorb contact and keep playing. Defensive ends would hit him, linebackers would wrap him up, and somehow, impossibly, Roethlisberger would shed the tackle, slide away from the pressure, and deliver a strike downfield while his would-be tacklers stared at their empty hands in disbelief. At 6 feet 5 inches and 240 pounds, Roethlisberger was built like a tight end who had wandered into the wrong position meeting. His legs were tree trunks. His center of gravity made him nearly impossible to topple, and his internal clock seemed to operate on a different frequency than everyone else on the field. Plays that should have been sacks became completions. Plays that should have been incompletions became touchdowns. Defensive coordinators would watch film of broken plays that Roethlisberger had converted into explosive gains and feel the cold creep of despair. You cannot kill what will not die, and Big Ben would not die. The terror of Roethlisberger was the terror of futility. Your best effort would not be enough. Your perfect execution would still fail. He extended plays until your coverage broke down, until your defenders ran out of stamina, until the inevitable completion occurred, and then he would do it again. Number 5, Steve Young. Behind every great player, there is hunger. Steve Young arrived in San Francisco starving. For years, Young sat behind the greatest quarterback of his generation, watching Joe Montana conduct masterpiece after masterpiece while Young waited on the sideline, his legendary competitiveness eating him alive from the inside. When his opportunity finally came, that stored fury exploded onto the field like a dam breaking. Young did not simply succeed Montana, he attacked the position with a ferocity that bordered on violence. He ran the football with reckless, frightening abandon, lowering his shoulder into defenders rather than sliding to safety. He threw left-handed strikes with velocity that made receivers' hands sting. He played every game like a personal vendetta against anyone who had ever doubted him. The numbers were staggering. 6 passing titles, rushing totals that embarrassed running backs, a Super Bowl performance against San Diego that may be the most dominant individual effort by a quarterback in championship history, 6 touchdown passes, 0 hesitation. But the true terror of Steve Young was not statistical, it was temperamental. Opponents could see it in his eyes. Young was not playing football, he was waging war. Every incompletion enraged him. Every defensive stop was a personal insult that demanded immediate retribution. He did not process failure, he obliterated it. Defenders learned quickly that tackling Steve Young was its own punishment. He would not give himself up, he would deliver the blow, and then, somehow, he would pop up angrier than before. The greatest quarterbacks inspire respect. Steve Young inspired something closer to genuine fear. He played every snap like it might be his last, with a fury that made everyone around him uncomfortable, and uncomfortable opponents make mistakes.
Number 4, Brett Favre. 297 consecutive starts. Let that number sink into your consciousness. For nearly 2 decades, Brett Favre walked onto football fields regardless of injury, regardless of pain, regardless of common sense and self-preservation. He played with broken thumbs, he played with torn muscles, he played after burying his father. He simply played. The Green Bay Packers legend was a gunslinger in the purest sense of that overused word. He did not manage games, he attacked them. He threw passes into coverage that made coaches scream and defensive backs salivate, and somehow, impossibly, those passes were often completed. His arm strength was legendary, the kind of raw power that could drive a football through Wisconsin winter winds and still arrive with velocity. But the terror of Favre was his unpredictability. You could not anticipate what he would do because he did not know what he would do. He operated on instinct and adrenaline, making decisions in the moment that defied film study and preparation. Defensive coordinators would build game plans around Favre's tendencies and watch helplessly as he improvised his way to a victory that made no logical sense. He loved the violence of football. Watch old footage and you will see Favre deliver hits after interceptions, celebrating contact like a linebacker trapped in a quarterback's body. He relished the chaos. He fed on pressure situations that made other quarterbacks crumble. The only thing more terrifying than a quarterback who makes calculated decisions is a quarterback who makes no calculations at all. Favre played like a man with nothing to lose, every single game for 19 years. And defenders who tried to hurt him learned that pain only seemed to make him stronger. Number 3. John Elway. January 11th, 1987. The Drive. 98 yards, 15 plays. Cleveland. Hostile territory. The season on the line, and John Elway walked into that huddle with the calm demeanor of a man who already knew the outcome. The Denver Broncos quarterback possessed physical tools that seemed almost unfair. His arm was a howitzer capable of launching footballs distances that defied physics. His mobility was exceptional, especially for his era. His competitive fire burned with an intensity that made teammates push harder and opponents shrink. But the terror of Elway was situational. He was most dangerous when the game was on the line. Comeback after comeback, fourth quarter magic that became so routine it should have lost its impact. Except it never did. Opposing teams would build leads against Denver and feel no comfort whatsoever. They knew what was coming. They knew the storm was approaching, and they knew there was nothing they could do to stop it. The L-copter would become the defining image. Super Bowl 32, Elway spinning through the air after contact, his aging body absorbing punishment that should have ended the play, gaining the first down through sheer stubborn refusal to be stopped. He was 37 years old. He did not care. John Elway made opponents feel the weight of inevitability. He made defensive coordinators feel the creeping dread of late game situations. He made an entire generation of AFC teams understand that no lead was safe and no victory was secure until the final whistle sounded. Fear, in its purest form, is the anticipation of something terrible that you cannot prevent. John Elway was that something terrible for 15 professional seasons. Number 2. Michael Vick. There was professional football before Michael Vick, and there was professional football after Michael Vick. They are not the same sport. The Atlanta Falcons quarterback did not merely change the position, he exposed the fundamental limitations of defensive football. He revealed that the entire structure of defending the pass was built on assumptions about human athletic limits that he did not share. Vick ran a legitimate 4.25 40-yard dash. He possessed the acceleration of a return specialist, the vision of a running back, and the arm strength to punish any defense that committed too heavily to stopping his legs. He was a video game come to life, a cheat code inserted into a league that had no counter strategy. Watch the film from his prime years, and you will see something that resembles panic. Not on the Atlanta sideline, in the opposing secondary. Defenders would begin plays with sound technique and disciplined positioning, and end plays sprinting desperately in the wrong direction, grasping at air where Vick had been a moment before. 173 rushing yards against Minnesota in a playoff game. 173 from a quarterback in a game that mattered. Vick made opponents feel the weight of obsolescence. Defensive schemes that had taken decades to develop became worthless against his unique gifts. Fundamentals that coaches had drilled since Pop Warner became counterproductive. Everything you knew was wrong. Defenders would watch film of Michael Vick and understand that their job was not to stop him. Their job was to survive him, to limit the damage, to hope he made a mistake, because when he did not make mistakes, there was simply no answer. He redefined what was possible. And possibility, when it lives entirely in your opponent's hands, is the purest form of terror.
Number 1. Tom Brady. You knew this was coming. So did the 23 teams that lost to him in the playoffs. Tom Brady was not the fastest quarterback. He was not the strongest. His athletic measurables at the combine were so mediocre that 198 players were selected before anyone took a chance on the skinny kid from Michigan. And yet, 7 Super Bowl championships,
10 Super Bowl appearances, 251 victories, the most prolific winner in the history of professional team sports in North America. The terror of Tom Brady was not physical, it was existential. You could build the perfect team, you could execute the perfect game plan, you could dominate for 59 minutes, and then you would watch, helpless and horrified, as Brady methodically dismantled everything you had built in the final 60 seconds. He did it so many times that it stopped being surprising and started being inevitable. 28-3. The Atlanta Falcons held a 25-point lead in Super Bowl 51 and still lost because Brady was on the other sideline, because Brady had time left on the clock, because Brady simply did not accept defeat. The psychological warfare he conducted was subtle and devastating. He remembered slights from decades past. He tracked doubters with the obsessive precision of a forensic accountant. Every victory was revenge for something. Every championship was another entry in an endless ledger of proof. Opponents did not merely lose to Tom Brady, they were broken by him. They were forced to confront the reality that their absolute best effort, their perfect preparation, their flawless execution was simply not enough, and they would have to face him again next season and the season after that. For 2 decades, Tom Brady haunted the National Football League like an inevitability, like gravity, like death and taxes and the certainty that no lead was ever safe. The scariest thing in football is not the biggest hit, it's not the fastest runner, it is the quiet certainty that your opponent believes he will win, and that he is right. Tom Brady believed, and he was right, 251 times. Fear is not an accident in professional football. It is a weapon, forged carefully and wielded strategically by those who understand its power. Every quarterback on this list understood something fundamental about competition. Physical talent wins games, mental strength wins championships, but fear, true fear implanted in the hearts of opponents, wins legacies. These 10 men made defenders hesitate. They made coordinators second-guess their schemes. They made entire organizations restructure their rosters in desperate attempts to solve problems that could not be solved. They walked onto football fields and watched grown men, elite professional athletes, shrink in their presence. That is power. The game of football pretends to be about schemes and statistics and measurable physical attributes. But beneath the surface, beneath the analytics and the game planning and the film study, lies something more primal. The battle is not merely physical, it is psychological. And in that psychological war, these 10 quarterbacks stood supreme. They did not just beat opponents, they haunted them. And in the end, that is the difference between being great and being truly unforgettably terrifying.